Hello everyone, my name is Joseph Henderson and this is my oral presentation on computer networking. I chose this topic because recently I was studying for the Microsoft MTA course 98366, which is the course on computer networking. There's a lot of information covered on that test, and this presentation is going to be very brief because there is so much information to cover. I only have about 5 to 10 minutes to get through as much as I can. So we're going to talk about the basics of networking, what the structure of the network is, what the system is, what some of the terms are, and how the whole process is set up. So a computer network is basically linking two computers together so they can share files or data. Now, it can be as simple as linking your computer to your printer. That is an example of a network. And when you actually send information to your printer, it's linked through an actual cable called a patch cable. Um, and that is the basics of how all the networks are set up. They're all linked through these cables and switches and hubs. Um, and that's basically how they send information back and forth. So let's cover some of the basic terms that we're probably going to need to know for some of the equipment that we're going to need for the physical setup. We're obviously going to need network cables, which are the actual physical cables that run from your computer, most likely in your office. They'll plug into the wall and they'll run along the ceiling to the server or wherever that is. The RJ45 connector is how those cables are actually connected together. So the cable plugs into the RJ45, and that is what actually connects into your network card. Um, so, a switch. A switch is basically a specialized piece of equipment. It is this thing right here. That links all of the computers together. So this is actually a 24 port switch, and I'll cover a little bit more about what the switch actually does in a little bit, but just know that in an office setting, which is most of my examples that I have, because home networks are a little bit smaller, but they all technically work about the same. At least the basic ideas behind them are. Each one of the workstation computers would be plugged into one of these switches, and these switches can be paired together to make even bigger networks on the local area network. So let's actually cover what a local area network is so we can talk about that. So I have this diagram right here. Let me take this off. This could technically be considered a local area network. You've got 4 computers all linked together into the switch. So it's a localized network we're just going to use the example of an office building. And each one of these computers can talk to each other through the switch. So a server is basically a repository for sharing files. It's basically a centralized, or it can be local, place to hold information or share or receive. Most servers will handle the networked printers and those types of things. Cable run, patch cable, we got that. Protocols, this is another big one that comes up in networking a lot. Protocols are basically the rules that govern how the packets or frames travel through the network, and we'll cover a little bit more about packets in just a moment. A router is it works kind of like the switch, how the switch will take information from computer A and send it over to computer B, but the router will actually pair 2 different networks. So this would be a local area network 1 and local area network 2, and they can be linked through the router. And this can link to the internet through TCP IPs and those types of things, but we'll cover that when we get to the layers portion. So network types, you have small networks, which is your own personal computer linking to a printer. You have home networks, which you get your router from your IP carrier, service provider. And sometimes those routers can be wireless, and you can connect that way. You'll connect your tablets. Microsoft has Home Group. Those are all examples of networks, and it's all about sharing files with one computer to another, files or data. So a typical office setup is going to have many of these computers that all need to work together, and they all need to access the printers and share files back and forth, so you don't have to actually take a physical copy with like a flash drive from one computer to another. Now, larger networks on, like, say, a college campus is going to work like this diagram set up here for the local area networks paired together. You can connect whole buildings together. You have through the router, and they can all be on one massive network. So the network doesn't have to be specifically just in one place. It's a broad term that refers to not only like a college campus, but those college campuses accessing Google and basically the internet and the interwebs across vast distances. So larger networks like Yahoo and Microsoft are all going to use like extremely large networks. They're going to have huge servers and server database banks that hold all of that information and share, and it's using all of the protocols and things to make all of that work. But it's been developing for quite some time. So let's get into the layers so we can kind of understand what we're talking about. So depending on what era you're getting your information from on layers, they can come in, the ones I know about are a 4-layer system or a 7-layer system. The key takeaway, though, is that the layers are purely theoretical. They don't actually exist, but when you get an error on your network, you can kind of determine where it's happening based on the layer that the packet is that the error is giving in. So the physical layer, which is layer 1, is the physical layer. It's all the hardware for your network, your computer, your cables, your network card, your router, your switches. Anything that's physical and electrical, that's all covered under the physical layer. The data link layer. The data link layer is the logical information of the packet. It contains the IP address, MAC address, and the data that needs to be transmitted across the network. And we'll cover in just a moment more specifics about MAC address and IP address. Layer 3 is the network layer. The network layer provides the protocol for routing of the data and its functions, and it helps facilitate and interconnect the networks together. Layer 4 is the transport layer. Essentially, it is the layer that helps handle the actual transmission of the packet, the information that needs to go from one computer to the next. The session layer is it's a two-part system. The session layer opens the connection with the other computer, and it also lets the other computer know that it's done sending information. So when it sends a packet, the packets get chopped up into bite-sized chunks, and they are sent across. But the two computers need to know when the session opens and when it closes. That way none of the packet information gets lost, because if it closes the session before the end of the packet goes, you're not going to get the rest of your file, and your file may be corrupted. The presentation layer helps with encoding and encryption. This applies a lot to like video encoding and helping get all of those pieces together on the final layer of the application layer. The example that's always used for the application layer is like your email. So when somebody sends you an email, the information gets routed to the server, the email server, and that information gets displayed on your computer on your email application, whether it be Outlook or Gmail. So it's taking all of that packet information from the server, and then it displays it. When it actually receives information, or you send information out, it'll break everything down backwards through the layers. But again, these layers are only hypothetical. When the computer is sending packets, it's sending millions and millions of bytes, or little packets of information constantly. So they don't happen necessarily one after the other, but these are all the pieces that fit together for that. So let's talk a little bit about how computer A would talk to computer B on this diagram. So when computer A needs to send information to computer